here, and I'm going to get a little complicated because I'm basically just giving my predictions for how this is going to play out for the next few weeks. So you can see, I'm sorry to our radio audience, you can see if you're on television where everyone is. Obviously, it's the Bills, Chiefs, Bengals, Jags, Ravens, Chargers, Dolphins in the playoffs at the moment. The Patriots, Jets, Titans, and then you get into the Steelers and Raiders, who basically have no chance, but are obviously still technically alive. So the scenarios are what I think is going to happen is essentially what you're looking at right now for the AFC playoff picture, which will mean I'm wrong because this year has been insane. But that's going to be my prediction. I am speaking a little bit with my heart here, so you can judge me if you want. But the Dolphins, I believe, will still make the playoffs. Now, they still need a lot. They need to beat the Patriots this week, beat the Jets in Week 18. If they lose one of those, depending on which games they lose, they need either the Seahawks to beat the Jets or the Bills to beat the Patriots in Week 18. I feel good about that Week 18 one. The Jets, they got to beat the Seahawks, beat the Dolphins, and then the Patriots to lose to either the Dolphins or the Bills. The Patriots need a lot. Now, Tennessee-Jacksonville is a bonus playoff game. So that's kind of fun for us. Whoever wins this game is in, and whoever loses is out. So I love this game for us in Week 18 because whoever wins this will win the AFC South. So we get a bonus playoff game, which is fun. And then you have the rest of the AFC, which basically need miracles to happen. Miracles do happen. Miracles happen. But I don't think it's going to happen for any of these teams. So I'm going to pick the Dolphins, and I think the AFC playoff picture will stay as it is. I'm also picking Jacksonville, which is why I think the AFC playoff picture will stay that way. Now, let's get to the NFC, and then we will talk to Dave Hellman about some of this as we get into the Cowboys. So the Lions have been a really fun story. They need a whole lot to happen. I love that Dan Campbell has gotten the team to where they are. They obviously had a terrible loss last week, which did not help. But the playoff picture right now is Eagles, Vikings, Niners, Bucks, Cowboys, Giants, Commanders, and then you have the Seahawks and the Lions in the hunt. Then you have the Packers, Panthers, and Saints who need a whole lot. Aaron Rodgers, as you mentioned earlier, Alex, is a little banged up. They need to beat the Vikings and the Lions, and then they need the Giants to lose out or the Commanders to lose one. So they need a whole lot to happen outside of beating two really good teams in the Lions and the Vikings. The Lions need to do a lot. The Giants don't lose to Jeff Saturday and the Eagles backups, so they're going to be in if they win this weekend against the Colts, which I think will happen. So it's basically going to come down to the Commanders and the Seahawks, and I'm going to go with the Commanders. So I know I'm not being very edgy here, but looking at how the season has gone for these teams that are on the edge of the playoffs at this point, the Commanders need to beat the Browns next week, which I think they'll do, and then beat the Cowboys in Week 18. If Washington goes 1-1, the Lions, Packers, and Seahawks all have to lose at least one game, which I think they will do. So that's why I think Washington has an easier path and will get in. That said, they did decide to go with Carson Wentz. So anything's on the board. So we'll see how it all plays out. With that being said, here's Dave Hellman, my co-host on Speak on FS1, 4:30 Eastern. Weekdays. Also covered the Cowboys for 10 years and writes for Fox Sports. A writer. We have a writer. We've had multiple writers because we had a writer in Emmanuel Macho on yesterday.
That's a good point. I'm happy to be one of them. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for joining me, even though I'm going to hurt your reputation because Cowboys fans are mad at me.
You could never stop. I mean,
maybe he will help your reputation.
I don't know. I genuinely
look at it that way. Look at the positive side of things.
So David,
I can help give you some cred.
Yeah,
you know, I can make things work with Cowboys Nation.
We'll see. Maybe that will happen. Maybe that will smooth things over with Cowboys Nation. I'm sorry to disappoint everyone, but I don't actually watch any of the videos and read all of your complaints. I'm aware they're out there, but I don't. I have stuff to do. I apologize. But I do appreciate that you guys are watching the show. And even if you're upset, I like the discourse. Like I said yesterday, maybe tone it down on the death threats. But everything else is fine.
Yeah, that's not
for the most part.
Don't do that.
But the Cowboys fans are interesting. I have a lot of Cowboys fans in my life, actually. My mother is a Cowboys fan. And I respect the resilience of Cowboys fans. I do. Because if we're being honest, factual, which I like to stay in that space, it's been almost 3 decades of pure disappointment for the Cowboys.
Yes.
Yes. And yet still, every year, I am berated into admitting that the Cowboys are somehow Super Bowl contenders. Now, this year, I will admit, feels a little bit different, and that is because of the defense. But the way that the Cowboys are playing right now, particularly the Cowboys defense, is that, am I riding on their reputation from earlier this season?
I mean, I think that's the central focal point of where the Cowboys are, and I think Cowboy fans are a little bit on edge. And you're not the first person that has told me this team feels different. And I laugh and I think back to last year when I thought that team felt different. And a big part of that was their defense. They led the league in takeaways. Trayvon Diggs had 11 interceptions. They reliably got the ball back to their offense. And they lost in the first game of the playoffs to the San Francisco 49ers at home. So I laugh because it's just like, and look, I've covered this team for 10 years. And at some point there's like a hamster wheel effect where you're just like, man, we are running a lot and not going anywhere. Like the Cowboys are not achieving milestones beyond the divisional round of the playoffs if they even get that far. And so I think that is where the anxiety comes in. I think that's why Cowboy fans are a little defensive right now, is that this is a really good team. What, they've won 11 games? They've already locked up their playoff spot weeks ahead of the end of the season for the second year in a row, which was never really a thing for them in the Jason Garrett era. And so Cowboy fans want to believe, of course they do. They want to believe this team is different. There's a lot of evidence that suggests that it is. They're a little bit banged up. They haven't gotten after the quarterback as successfully as they had earlier in the season. The last month or so, the sacks haven't been coming at quite the same rate. A lot of that is injuries. The secondary is injured. And then obviously, regardless of whose fault it is, the offense consistently has a turnover problem. That's just facts. We can blame Dak. We don't have to blame Dak. You know how I feel. You do a show with me every day. But the point is like, this is a good team, but there's a lot of evidence that suggests that they play the type of football that might bite them in the playoffs. And so I think Cowboy fans are just very, very anxious right now, thinking like, are we going to do this again? Are we going to have a team that's capable of winning 11 and 12 games and not make any noise in the playoffs? Because that's what it's all about.
Well, you and I joke about the Cowboys juice because I was with you on the Cowboys last year. Despite what Twitter will tell you, I am a huge Dak defender and Dak fan. As Alex brought up when we were in the break, I advocated for Dak to get paid the entire time, mostly because I thought it was outrageous, this idea that Dak shouldn't be paid when he did all that he did for the Cowboys. Like, oh, well, if we paid Dak, we're not going to have players around. What? Why is that my problem? I'm a fourth-round draft pick. Look what I've done for on that salary. If you couldn't put players around me then, what do I care that if I get paid, you can't put players around me? Then you can't figure it out. Like, that's how that works. I'm glad Dak got paid. I thought he should have been paid before Zeke. And I think that you can win a Super Bowl with Dak. My question with the Cowboys is, and this is where I got last year when I was with you, thinking that they were able to make a run, and it was a disappointing exit in the most disastrous way possible from the playoffs, is what do they actually need to make a run? Because it feels like they have everything. They have a quarterback capable of winning a Super Bowl. I know everyone bangs on their skill positions. I don't think that their receivers are that bad. I think CeeDee Lamb is fully capable. They clearly have a running game that is top in the league. They have a defense. They have a Super Bowl winning coach. What is this mysterious amoeba that keeps the Cowboys from winning?
That's a really good question. And I think you make a good point. I mean, I could sit here. I don't think the Cowboys' skill players are as good as they could be, specifically in the passing game. I think.
Sure, they should have kept Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, I could do a whole show on that. I think I've been banging that drum since they traded him. And so, I mean, there are things you can identify, right? Like, especially with the injuries they're suffering right now, the cornerback position outside of Trayvon Diggs really doesn't look inspiring. The flip side of that is everybody in the league feels that way. Like, every playoff team is like, damn, like, we're just catching some bad luck right now. We got the wrong injuries. We don't have the right guys. So, to your point, I think there are ways the Cowboys could improve